The NCAA has a whole bunch of draft-eligible talent, but the youngest of them all, Ilia Morozov, has been dominant so far in his young college career against all expectations. So on today's show, we ask the question, how has he done it so far, and where will it lead him in the National Hockey League?
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down a single player from my region that I am scouting here this season. And it's a very interesting name. It's a player who was not expected to be playing in college this season. Everyone expected him to be back in the USHL as he was playing last year. But no, he got the call-up. And not just a call-up for a depth role either. He has been the number one center. He's been producing at a very impressive clip. He's a very young player for this draft class, but the thing that he's been bringing most to his team night in, night out has been consistency and maturity in the details and the things he does well, the physicality. All of this is very projectable to the National Hockey League. And while he does not have the most dynamic skills, this is no Gavin McKenna with the puck on his stick, he has everything you need to be a bottom six regular in the National Hockey League. And the bigger question is, how much higher could he rise in his projection? But before we dive into that question and the show as a whole, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So Ilia Morozov, a fascinating 6'3", 205-pound left shot centerman who's been playing down the middle here all season long with Ohio Miami. And this is after a year playing in the USHL last season with the Tri-City Storm. He had 11 goals, 22 points in 59 games. Respectable, but nothing fantastic. And this season, he has 4 goals and 9 points in just 8 games. And one of those games, his most recent against Arizona State University, he only played about 4.5 minutes in, and he had a game misconduct penalty, so was kicked out earlier as a result of that. But that takes down that kind of rate of scoring even more. So it's even more impressive. And he's an August 3rd, 2008 birthday, so a very young player. But what makes him special? Let's start off with that big, broad maturity. There are so many mature aspects of his game, details that he plays with, and parts of the way he's able to use his frame. This is a big player, and he uses that size to get to the middle of the ice. He's strong at the net front. He's able to win his one-on-one battles, get the inside positioning, out-leverage older, more physically inclined players. And he's doing this as the youngest player in college. He's just a month and a half off from being eligible for next year's draft. Isn't that wild for a player doing this well in the collegiate ranks and doing so on a team, might I add, with Miami, Ohio, that, how can I put this lightly, was bad last season. They did not get a single win past November. So everything, the entire rest of the season was only losses and ties. This was a not very good program. And so far this season, they've been able to win their way into a top 20 power ranking conversations. And I've been pushing them up into my personal top 15. We publish these at Elite Prospects every 2 weeks. And Morozov is a really exciting talent because the way that he's been elevating the players around him is by doing the things that are most difficult for a young player to do while taking this big step up in quality of competition and pace and intensity and physicality. The frame, of course, that middle focus isn't just that he skates to the middle of the ice, that his off-puck routes are focused at driving the middle lane, that he's able to outmuscle guys to the net front. It's also his on-puck focus. As a passer, he's looking to get the puck into the most dangerous areas on the ice. And these are all things that you need in your toolkit, in your habits, to not just make a difference at the college level as such a young player, but to also translate those strengths to the National Hockey League someday. And I think he's certainly gaining some traction as a back half of the first round candidate in this year's draft. Really hot start for him this season. His two-way impact is really what's been gaining him trust and minutes so far this season. He's reliable, he's intense, he skates hard, got a really high motor on him, very pacey player, in my opinion, in the off-puck details at least. The on-puck pace, I think, is still developing a little bit, but he's been really solid in terms of one-touch scoring, in terms of making plays quickly under pressure with the puck on his stick, and really playing really well between his two wingers, one of whom has been Coach Adelic, player that I've watched a lot through the OHL in the past few years and thought deserving of NHL draft selections on more than one occasion, as a first-time eligible, as a re-entry. Very pacey, very quick, very hard-working, quick-thinking, playmaking focused forward who can play down the middle, play on the wing, and he's been dynamite so far here with Miami. He leads them in scoring with 11 points through 8 games and 5 goals, 6 assists. But Morozov is really not far off, and he's just been impressing me so often here this season. And beyond just that maturity, I also think that the 3-zone impact that is, of course, a result of that maturity is very exciting if you're trying to project this player to the National Hockey League, to the best league in hockey someday. He's hardworking. He's really good, I think, in terms of having fit into the system so far at the college level, in terms of reading his teammates, understanding the expectations from the coaching staff, waiting for triggers to really try to close gaps and apply pressure. He's not just doing it mindlessly. There's a real rhyme and reason behind everything he does as a defensive piece in any of the 3 zones, whether it be in terms of offensive zone checking or defensive zone cycle structure, and trying to be disruptive with his stick and lunge at the right moments. There's been a lot to like with this player so far, and I think that these elements really make him projectable as a center in the National Hockey League, and that might be, in the end, the thing that balloons his draft stock more than any other factor. It's that he's a center, and this is not a draft class with many centermen. At the top end of the class, you have Tynan Lawrence of Muskegon Lumberjacks, and then you have a guy like Yegor Shilov from the QMJHL in Victoriaville, and beyond that, you have a whole bunch of players that are going to be in a mix among centers, and we'll see who separates themselves from the pack. But Morozov might be one of them. He has the NHL frame, he has the details, he has the net front ability, he has the quick thinking under pressure, the defensive implications, and overall just being highly involved and very mature for his age, as the youngest player in the entire NCAA. And that's, I think, a moniker that's only going to help his stock among NHL teams, and for a player that was also that close to being a 2027 draft eligible. This has been impressive so far for Morozov, and he's certainly winning me over as a fan, as a supporter, in terms of pushing him up my personal draft board. I think he's solidifying a spot at the tail end of my first round, and he reminds me of a player like Shane Van Sage from last season, a player that, the upside isn't the highest. The tools, as we'll discuss, are not the thing that make him rise above be the rising tide and rise above his opponents. It really is the habits, the details, the intensity, the frame. Rather than being an expert puck handler, that's not the strongest aspect of his game, or being a really deceptive and dynamic playmaker. He keeps things simple, he keeps things linear, but he gets pucks from the outside to the inside, whether it be by carrying the puck or passing the puck. And doing that on top of everything else that we've mentioned here in the first segment, I think makes him a very intriguing possibility to be a first-round talent in this year's NHL draft. But that wraps up this first segment. In the next one, we're going to break down exactly what he has been doing so far this season, and we'll be reading out one of the scouting reports that I've written about this player early on in the year. But before we do that, we've got a quick message here from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. Let's be real. Making excuses does not solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your front door, and Rugiet makes it so easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, and no in-person appointments. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL, and don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. All righty, let's continue this show here in the second segment, talking about Ilia Morozov of Miami University, Ohio, and a player that has just, as I mentioned, really, really grown on me. But what has it been this season that's so impressive? Is it just the production? Is it how he's slotted in? And just how much has he actually been playing? Well, the answer to that last part is the easiest here, and that is a lot. Morozov has been playing very clearly first line minutes. He's playing between 17 and 22 minutes every single night. That is massive trust for a freshman player, even more so for a 17-year-old who doesn't even turn 18 until after the draft in the summertime, when training camp's almost kicking off again as well. Like, this player has just been as reliable as can be for any guy this young. And among all the players from the CHL, the stars that have made that switch, like, of course, Gavin McKenna, Keaton Verhoef, the other draft eligibles here, but also guys that have been selected, like Caden Lindstrom and Roger McQueen. You have a lot of players that are taking a lot longer to adapt than it's taken Ilia Morozov, really finding his niche as a two-way, hard-working guy that does all the dirty work on his line here in college hockey. And overall, he's a player, I think, that's going to really keep improving his stock here as the year unfolds, especially if he's able to layer in a little bit more skill and dynamism with the many puck touches that he's getting with that deployment. And he's playing an even bigger role, right, than he was last season in the USHL, where he was exclusively like a third line guy, getting some second line opportunities, but not really playing all that much. And I think that all of these factors combine for a player that is really leapfrogging players that are older and have been in the spotlight for longer among the draft rankings here this season, and really entering that late first round conversation. And if any of you have watched this player, please do let me know in the comments down below here on YouTube what your thoughts have been. Is this a guy that's impressed you? Does he just seem maybe a bit too bland for your taste? Because he's not the most exciting player on puck. Like, this has certainly been the criticism coming from some of my colleagues that have been watching him as well. It's just that what moves the needle here? What breaks the game open? And he's not a game breaker. He is a line elevator and a facilitator and a supporter in all three zones, rather than the guy that makes the difference necessarily night in, night out. But let's talk a little bit about individual game performance, because I'm going to read to you a scouting report that I wrote about his October 10th game against RPI. And it was the game where he scored his first 2 college goals. And I wrote that potting his first 2 college goals and adding an assist weren't even the most impressive aspects of this performance from Morozov, whose details, engagement, and net front physicality were dominant at their best. He certainly doesn't look like the youngest player in college hockey, with strong habits in all three zones, a hulking frame, and adaptable shooting skill. He wasn't a passenger on a single shift, showing a high activity rate and a knack for getting involved in the thick of things. He plants himself between the puck and his opponents, holds off checkers with a free arm, and through strong scanning habits, always retained an outlet option in mind to alleviate pressure. His inside contact game is already built for professional hockey, spinning off checks, planting his feet to be immovable at the net front, and consistently getting underneath opponent sticks. RPI had an absolute nightmare trying to box him out. His 2 markers showcase his ability to locate and access pockets of space, corral awkward passes, and get off a heavy release off the catch with great quickness. Morozov's skating is a limiting factor at this stage, lacking the explosiveness, depth, agility, and posture to gain separation. But a high stride rate and work ethic led to more one-puck races than his mechanics should have allowed in this game, while his off-puck awareness and physical tools carved out space shift after shift. With such pace, versatility, and intelligence, Morozov is gathering arguments for top 50 or even first-round consideration on our board. And I think that game really encapsulates a lot of what Morozov does so well. But the next night, he played another game, and I want to read that scouting report as well. It's a bit of a shorter one, not from me this time, but from my colleague Dylan Griffin, our Russian scout, who was not quite as impressed with Morozov's overall performance and impact in the game. So just so you get a narrative of the 2 different sides of things rather than just my enthusiasm. Dylan writes, "This wasn't much of a needle-moving performance from Morozov. The box score tells a story of its own, though with a goal and 2 assists edged next to his name in just his 4th NCAA match. The theme of the game is commitment to physicality. Flying in to engage with high energy, he leveraged his frame pretty effectively to force separations. A pair of playmaking flashes at either end of the 60 minutes, using prolonged carries around the perimeter to find the perfect time to strike with precision, led to his assists. I didn't see enough of the rest of the tools to find much value in this viewing overall. He seemed to be outpaced and outskilled by his line mates, leaving him in more of a supporting role for the majority of possession time. Could fly as a late B grade given the physical details, which would correlate to a back half of the 3rd round projection here from Dylan." And I think that's also kind of where the conversation is with this player at this stage, at least in scouting debates. Is he special enough? Is this maturity really special enough to be considered a back half of the 1st round contender because he is a almost slam dunk bottom 6 NHLer with some upside for more if you want to bet on the tools that you see if they convince you by draft day? Or is this really exclusively a checker who could make a mark in like a 4th line capacity, maybe a 3rd line if you're lucky, but just doesn't have the tools to take that next step, to push the upside further? In that case, then I think Dylan's assessment is completely right in terms of it being more of a B- kind of grade of like 3rd round swing that you take because he's mature, he's hardworking, he's projectable, he's physical, he has all these good habits and details, but nothing exceptional, nothing special. Whereas I think where I'm at right now with Morozov is that his maturity at this age is in of itself a special element, and it's one I'm kind of willing to swing on. But we'll see if he continues to convince me of that here as the season rolls on. And in the final segment, we will be discussing where he should end up on draft day, making a little prediction here early on in the season, as well as what he would look like in the National Hockey League. But before we do that, we've got a quick message here from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to 4th quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. I know that's always my favorite way to get in on the action, to combine multiple predictions from multiple different players to maximize my potential return. It keeps every single game so exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, new customers get $300 in bonus bets with FanDuel when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's wrap up the show here talking about Ilia Morozov, the big, reliable centerman from Miami University, Ohio. And let's wrap things up here with the NHL and draft projection. What is this player really going to be? Let's pin this down. Let's make our best guess from what we know so far. So we know that he's got the pace, he's got the physicality, he's got the work rate, he's involved in all 3 zones. Does that pace translate to on-puck pace? Big question mark. Can his skating catch up to keep making these checking skills an advantage as he rises up the ranks? That is another question mark. He's going to have to make adaptations to keep being the same style as effective as he is off puck right now in college as he will need to be at the pro level. And last but not least, is the maturity enough to rise above the lack of standout tools? Because with the puck on a stick, there's nothing all that special that he does. He has a good shot that he's able to get off quickly. Is he able to do that in terms of scoring higher than he's expected to, in terms of being a potential one-time threat on the power play, in terms of being a go-to sniper option on his team? I don't think so. I think he's more of like your second wave of goal scoring that chips in throughout the season and comes up with some big goals when you need them to, but isn't the night in, night out go-to scorer. In terms of penalty kill, maybe he becomes a penalty killing specialist. I would love to see him focusing on faceoffs as well, and just be a possession monster in terms of both winning possession in the circle, winning it in terms of his defensive implications and stick lifts and stripping pucks and intercepting pucks, as well as maintaining possession, being that high-end puck protector who's able to extend offensive zone sequences and connect play between his more skilled wingers. If he's able to do all those things at a really high level, then yeah, you're talking about a middle six centerman in the National Hockey League, and that's more than worth a first-round selection. But if that's not the case, you're talking more about a fourth line center who has some 3C potential as well in him. And is that worth a first-round pick? In today's NHL, maybe. Like, centers are very, very valued, especially when they're big, especially when they are detailed like this and project as like hard to play against, especially come playoff time, which Morozov is well on his way to becoming. Maybe, right? Maybe closer to second round value, but if you take that in the first with the positional value at center, maybe you're not so mad about it. And I think some teams, especially contenders, who are trying to fill out their lineups and maybe even get a player who can help them faster than other guys because he's got the frame, he's got a lot of the details, he can help you defensively sooner than he'll be able to help you offensively, for sure. I think that there's also value in that. If a team that's just off the back of a Stanley Cup run has a first round selection remaining and just thinks, screw it, let's swing on a guy who might crack our roster within 2 years, rather than taking a long swing at a guy that's only going to be entering your team once your window is already closed. I think there's also sense in that. So I'm curious to see how it kind of ends up going on draft day for Morozov, of course, if he continues this level of production and continues improving as well in his ability to also be a 5-on-5 scoring threat and keep up with the pace of his wingers on puck, which has been a little bit more of a struggle so far this season. But if he's able to surmount all of this, what type of player comps does he have in his NHL upside if he really reaches his potential? We already mentioned Shane Van Sage as a stylistic comparable from last year's draft, but beyond him in the National Hockey League, one of the closest I have is Ridley Gregg from the Ottawa Senators, but his game is entirely built on speed. It is all speed with Ridley Gregg, and Morozov does not have that separating speed just yet. So this is an element where if that speed, if that skating can really take a couple steps in the next couple of seasons, then yeah, you're talking about a guy that can play in all situations, up and down your lineup, be a line elevator playing down the middle or on the wing in a more complementary top six role in case of injuries, but is really like a third line center if everyone's healthy. I think that would be great value, but there's definitely still a lot of ground to make up to get to that kind of stage for a player like Morozov, and perhaps a bit less of an exciting player comp, but still a valuable one. Jake Evans of the Montreal Canadiens, a player who's also does play with speed. So another thing here where I think with Morozov, he will be able to explore both the upper ends of his upside, but also raise his floor if that skating level improves, especially in terms of explosiveness, first couple of steps out of the gate. But Jake Evans has that like physical bite, really hardworking, very positionally detailed, wins puck battles in all three zones, can play PK, big defensive faceoffs, wherever you need him to be, you plug him in and he's there. I could see that as well as kind of a like a result for Morozov's development. So a lot of possibilities here in terms of outcomes. I think really within that bottom 9 of a forward core, everything stands open for Morozov at this point, but we will see. And I know that I'm more on the bullish end of the people that have been evaluating his game so far this season. I really like what I've seen, as I think this video has really made quite clear, and view him as one of my top 7 draft eligible talents out of the U.S. for this upcoming draft. But yeah, I think that the upside is definitely the biggest question. It's still what I'm debating the most internally, and the thing that could certainly still affect where I have him ranked, whether that be inside the first or in the second round at the end of the day, as we keep progressing here through our season. And our next ranking meeting is coming up quite soon at Elite Prospects at the tail end of November. So keep your eyes peeled for that and where Morozov's going to fall in those rankings. So in terms of final draft day predictions, I'm going to go with the 22 to 35 range. I think he's going to fall right in there. So tail end of the first, early second round. There aren't many centers. That could be the one thing that maybe makes him the Jack Nesbitt of this year's draft class, who gets selected top 15 because of the position that he plays and the size that he brings to the equation and the two-way intensity and physical grit he has. But I think more than likely it falls more towards the tail end of the first round. But that's my guess at this stage. We'll see how that keeps developing as the year goes on. But that wraps things up here for us today. If you're watching on YouTube, please do leave those comments down below. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. It's always greatly appreciated. And for your second listen, you can head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. That's it here for me today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA Scout at Elite Prospects, and I look forward to catching you listening again very, very soon.